Oh, okay, that was too much. All right, here is battery 1 and cat number 1 that just ran by. This is what it looks like. Doesn't really appear to be damaged, but I can tell. I mean, there's some, spots on the box, but that's about it. First thing we have in here is going to be our quick start guide, user manual, I don't know, some cautions about what to do and what not to do, how to install your battery cables, terminal covers, ground wire, some screws, and then we get 2 short battery cables. I don't see any dents or anything like that, but they do have some of that really thick foam right up here in the front. This stuff right here, which is going to help protect that front end. Nice. These don't have the handles on them. Oh, handles are right here. There you go. All right, well that's kind of different than what I think I've seen from other people's videos, as maybe these were attached. I don't know. Well, there you go. All right, so here's battery number 1. It does not appear to be damaged at all. I like the size of these. They're not like massive. That's battery number 1. They actually sent 2. What's going on, everybody? I'm Average Joe, and welcome to another Average video. Today's Average video, you guessed it, we're going to be testing out that eco-worthy 100 amp hour server rack battery. I want to say they've done a couple improvements to it from a couple of videos that I've already seen from other people reviewing this battery, but I guess, I don't know, we'll find out. Let's get to it. Alrighty, couple things before we get started. Yes, I did not pay for these. EcoWorthy did send out 2 batteries for me to review and test and or, use in my system long term, all of that kind of jazz. Again, I did not pay for these 2 batteries right here. Okay, so with that out of the way, in this video, there's a couple things I want to accomplish, okay? So first one is going to be going over the features and, specifications, stuff like that. Second one is gonna be opening it up and taking a look inside. Third one's gonna be like communications, Bluetooth, computer, inverter, stuff like that. And the fourth one is gonna be testing it out. So some of that testing is gonna be, the first one is gonna be a capacity test. Of course, I'm gonna do that for both batteries. I am going to do a 0.2C discharge, rate or capacity test. We may or may not do, like a full 1C, which is 100 amps discharge. Well, actually, we'll probably test that during the regular testing. And then the second one, which is kind of like the main one for me, is hooking it up to the inverter and running your house. And that could include running your house in an off-grid situation, kind of like what I already have right now. I do have the grid available, although I use the grid as a backup. Okay, so is this battery good for going off-grid? The second part of that is, would this be good for just an emergency backup battery? Your grid hardly ever goes down, but you want to have a battery backup. Is this going to be a reliable battery for that? All right, I think those are the main things that I want to accomplish in this video. Let's get to it. Alrighty, so what we have here is the EcoWorthy 100 amp hour lithium iron phosphate server rack battery and all of the stuff that comes with it, which I'll go over real quick and then we'll take a closer look at the battery. Okay, so starting right down here, you're gonna get a couple of different things. The first one is gonna be this warning, well, because I'm guessing why they are now including this. Basically, do not install your terminals the wrong way because you might end up touching the screws and shorting things out. All right, so they do give you a little warning for that. The next thing is going to be the app quick guide, so you can connect to this with Bluetooth, and they have a QR code for you to scan to be able to use the EcoWorthy app, which we will take a look at here shortly. You can also connect to this with a computer through the RS232 port, which it does not include an adapter for that, by the way. I would imagine most people don't connect to this way just because it does come with Bluetooth, but hey, basically you're going to log into this website right here, which I have already done and have it installed on a laptop. And then finally you are going to get the manual in here with basically everything you want to know about this battery. Like right down here, it's going to give you the rated voltage, which is 51.2 volts. That's going to be your nominal volts. Otherwise, this is technically known as a 48 volt battery. Battery voltage range is 40 to 58.4 volts. Nominal energy is 5.12 kilowatt hour, and the nominal capacity is 100 amp hour. Dimensions, which is 22 by 19 by 5.25. It weighs 94.8 pounds or 43 kilograms. The standard charge current is 50 amps. The max charge current is 100 amps. Standard discharge is 50 amps, and then max discharge current is 100 amps. Communications is RS45, CAN, and RS232. You can parallel a max of 15 together. It's got your operating temperatures and all that kind of fun stuff right there. Okay, like this page right here could be pretty helpful for all of your dip switches and assigning each battery an address. And of course there's other helpful information in here for your communications, your pin diagram, stuff like that, your parallel wiring instructions, you know, just all sorts of useful information in here. All right, these are going to be the rest of the items that come with each battery. So you're going to get two handles right up here. I think that is a revision that they have done from other videos that I've seen. I think the previous version, whenever they would ship them, if somebody managed to drop the box, etc., it actually ended up damaging the front end with the handles already attached. So now what they have done, obviously, is made these removable. So you get two handles right there with all the screws to attach those. Basically, it's 4 screws each that are going to attach right up here on the front. Next thing you're going to get is 2 battery cables right here. These are basically paralleling cables right here. So if you have more than one battery, you can parallel those together. These battery cables are 2 AWG, and of course they're the super flexible silicone type, and they are rated for 200 degrees Celsius. Next one over is going to be your ground cable with a ground screw, so you can ground everything together. Next one is going to be your communication cable if you have more than one battery. And then next you're going to get 2 black and 2 red battery terminal covers. And then finally, they actually give you 2 pieces of heat shrink for whenever you make up your new battery cables if you don't have any made up. And finally, we're on to the server rack battery. Of course, this is going to look very, very similar to many other server rack batteries out there, but nonetheless, we will take a look. So of course, you are going to get your MAC address for your Bluetooth. I'm just going to put that right over there. So of course, right here on the front, it says eco-worthy with their logo right here. 51.2 volts, 100 amp hour, lithium iron phosphate battery. You're going to get 2 negative and 2 positive battery terminals, and these do come with M8 bolts right here, basically 1 for each terminal. You're going to get a 125 amp Chint circuit breaker right here, your power button, and then all of your LED and your communications right here. So starting over here on the left hand side for your LEDs, you're going to get your on and off, your run, alarm, and then your charge LED indicators right here. There are 6. There is a little tiny reset button in this hole right here. You're going to get all of your dip switches right here for assigning each battery an address. You're going to get dry contacts, and then finally your communications right down here. So we got RS45 and CAN. These are going to be for your inverter communication. Next one over is RS232. That's going to be for connecting up to a computer. And then finally your other RS45 in and out ports for communicating to the next battery. And then right over here on the very, very end is going to be where you connect up that ground screw and ground wire. All right, that's pretty much all we have on the front side. On to the right side, you do have another sticker with your MAC address on here for your Bluetooth connectivity. So I'm not actually sure why they had that second one right up on the front, but there you go. But obviously the main thing on this side is going to be your data sticker with all the specifications and all of that kind of stuff on there. And as everybody else has stated previously, these are not UL listed, okay? Now there's a few things listed down here, but there's no UL rating at this time. If we flip around to the back side, absolutely nothing, and then on to the left side, absolutely nothing. All right, next what we're gonna do is pop the top. I have taken the top off of these previously so I could manually balance these as quick as I possibly could, so I didn't have to wait for, to do a bunch of cycles in order for them to get completely balanced out. Having said that, we'll go ahead and remove the top, and let me show you the underneath side. It does have a protective covering, and boom. All right, real quick, I will say that this does look fan-freaking-tastic. However, there are a few things that I've seen better in other server rack batteries, which I'll go over here in just a second. But first, we'll start with the good. Everything is nice and neat. All the balance leads are heat shrinked and properly labeled, which is a good thing. We do have the globs of silicone right here holding down the temperature sensors on the cell. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4, and there's probably, obviously a couple on the BMS right here. Everything has zip ties, everything is in place, nice and neat. Same thing for all of the cable management and all that kind of stuff through here. A couple of the negatives, or the things that I've seen better in other server rack batteries, is, well, you can see one of them right here is the sticky part of the fish tape, it just kind of comes off right there. That's not really a big deal. The next thing that I saw, that each and every single nut in here, or basically every piece of hardware, doesn't have the little tiny check mark or little tiny glob of glue on there to make sure they don't come off, or to signify that it was actually torqued and checked. Other than that, I don't think there's too many other gripes that I would have. Now, a couple differences that I've noticed from this server rack battery compared to other server rack batteries that I've seen is, obviously, the BMS is over here on the left side. Typically, they're right up here in the front. And one of the other differences from this one to others that I've seen is the other ones, they're perfectly centered inside the box. The metal comes all the way up, where the cells are basically hugged on all 4 sides. This one obviously isn't, so therefore they're using less metal. It costs a little bit cheaper, and it is a little bit lighter. I don't know if that's a pro or a con, but that is a difference that I've seen. All right, next thing what I'll do is I'll just kind of zoom in around the sides so you can see a little bit closer what's exactly in here. And then what I want to do is maybe take off one of these rails to see if we can see a QR code, because all of these cells are supposed to be the REPT brand. I'm going to do my very best to keep everything in focus to see what we can see. So starting over here on the positive side, we'll just go right back here. So we have our positive bus bar, which connects both positives together. There's a communication board right down there, which goes to the front. Let's see. Yeah, it's pretty difficult to actually see back there. So we got our power button, and I think that's actually it back there. I don't even see the pre-charge resistor that I've seen in other videos from people reviewing these batteries. So maybe it's actually built into the BMS over here. I'm not entirely sure. All right, so anyway, we have our positive wire going right over here, and it's going to go down to the 125 amp circuit breaker right there in the front. And then out of the circuit breaker, it's going to come up and then go right to our main positive of the battery bank right there. And then for our negative, it looks like we have 2 smaller gauge wires right here, which I will get those here in just a second. And those are going to go right into our BMS. And then out of the bottom of the BMS right over there, which is going to be our main battery negative. And one thing I did forget to mention about the batteries is everything is laser welded right here. And one other thing that you can notice about these bus bars is they don't have the indentation right here in the middle. So if the batteries do flex a little bit, there's no flex in the bus bars. So to me, in my opinion, I don't actually think that's a big deal at all. I know many other people think that's, I don't know, kind of a big deal. I don't think it's a big deal at all. Actually, my DIY battery bank over there basically has the same style of bus bars, and it's not going to be a problem there either, because basically all of these cells are not really under compression, but they kind of are, with that steel plate right over there to the steel plate right here in the back. Everything is fixed in place. Those cells shouldn't be moving around anyway. So anyway, some people have a problem with that. I don't. Other than that, here is the BMS. I mean, I really can't see a whole lot on there. If I can get any sort of numbers or anything like that, I will post those on the screen. I don't see the pre-charge resistor, but it's most likely built into the BMS. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much all I can see right here. I'll just do a little wiggle. It's definitely not loose. Oh, that one does have a mark on there, so that one was quality control checked. The positive also has a little mark on there, so that is good. That's basically what I was looking for earlier. Ooh, that's kind of small in my opinion. It's got 8 AWG wires coming off of the negative over here. I'm guessing that's what is going over here to the negative of the battery. In my opinion, that's really small. The positive here is 5 AWG. I don't know why they're using such small wires in here. So to me, another con or negative would be the battery cable size in here. 5 AWG is too small, and then 2 8s is also too small, especially if you can run these at 100 amps. You know, continuous. All right, next thing I want to do is pull off one of these rails and see if we can find a QR code and scan that real quick. It would be nice if I could just lightly lift one of these up. Okay, I did see a QR code right underneath here, which I will try to scan that. Alrighty, so they are using the RAPT cells, obviously lithium iron phosphate, but everything else after that is unknown. Basically all we have is the production date of 9/12/2024. And yeah, I mean, other than that, that's all we got. Since we're in here, we are going to test the temperature protection. Okay. All right, I know I haven't gone through the Bluetooth connections or anything like that. I will go over all that stuff here in just a couple of minutes, but at the moment I am connected with the Overkill Solar app. I went down here to the bottom and basically pulled all the data and settings. So what we have in here for temperature range is the charge over temperature is 65 degrees C or 149 degrees freedom. We have the charge under temp, which is -0, which is 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Discharge over temperature is 65 C, again 149 freedom. And then discharge under temperature is -20 C or -4 degrees freedom. Basically all we're going to do, of course, is see if it switches over at the correct temperature. The ice water would be the best, but I just didn't want to get that. This will be good enough. Here we go. We're down to 7C. There we go. Charge under temp worked just fine. Let me warm it up. There we go. It reset. All right, now we're going to do the heat test. There we go. I think it showed a little bit higher on here, but I could have just missed it. All right, and then of course, if you needed to see the release temperatures, that is also in here as well. 50C, 5C, 50C, and -15 degrees C. And there's a trigger delay, etc. right over here on the sides. All of that seems to be working properly. I'm not gonna do the discharge one because I'm pretty sure it'll be the exact same. So all of that works out perfectly. This sucker buttoned up and we can do our capacity tests, and then once those are done, we can hook it up to the house. I'm gonna throw on the handles real quick. It even came with extra screws. My wife will love that. Boom. Alrighty, it's the very next day and we're gonna go over some of the connectivity with the batteries, which is gonna be the Bluetooth in the Bluetooth app and then connecting up with a computer because we have a couple of minutes here. I actually forgot to hit the charge button on one of the batteries last night before I went to bed after the capacity test. So we do have a couple of minutes before we connect everything up to the inverter and then power my house and do some testing that way. So number one, I guess we will start with the computer since I do have that connected right now. I don't have screen sharing on this computer, so I am going to be pointing the camera at the screen. I'll try to make it as clear as I possibly can. But anyway, inside the little quick app guide right over here, there is a website that they have listed. I'll try to link it down below so you don't have to type it in yourself, but it's on page, there's no pages. It is on this page right here. It says BMS Tool Quick Guide. There is a link right here. Right now you have to manually type it in, which I did do, and I downloaded that software. So you are going to need a RS232 to USB adapter if you wanted to connect this way, and I'll show you real quick. All right, so we are connected right down there through the RS232 port, and we are connected to a USB on this end right here. All right, anyway, I downloaded the BMS tool and drive for Windows. I extracted those into a folder, and then of course inside of here, I'm pretty sure this is a driver. I have no idea. I didn't click on that. I went into the folder and then clicked on the ES-UP version 1.22.16. That is the application. I do have a cat that just showed up. All right, so in here, basically you're gonna make sure your comms are set up, and then your baud rate is set to 9600, and then you can just hit the open button. All right, so here's what the app looks like. It's gonna give you basically everything you need to know about this battery, okay? So right now we're sitting at 97% state of charge. I'm actually charging it at 10.2 amps. We have our pack voltage of 54.18 and slowly rising. The cycle index is 1. That would be the capacity test that I finished last night. Full capacity and rated capacity are 100 amp hours. Right over here is gonna be all of your cell voltages. Number 1 is gonna be our highest cell for 3391. Number 7 is going to be our lowest cell at 3385. Our delta between the max and the min is 6 millivolts, which is fan-freaking-tastic right now. Right below that is going to be all the cell voltages. So we got 1 through 8 and then 9 through 16 right through here. Right below that is going to give you all of your temperature sensors and what those temperatures are. You can set your protocols and stuff down here, which I did do in the Android app. But anyway, you're going to hit the read button and it'll read what you have set in here. I have changed them to the lux power because that's most likely what we're going to be connecting to. However, there is quite a few in here that you can choose from for the RS485, and then for the CAN protocol, again, there are lots of options in here, and then you would choose your inverter protocol and then hit the set button, and it's going to go ahead and save that for you. All right, so if you have multiple batteries connected up, you can also read every single battery in here as long as they are all connected and communicating together, which I don't have at this moment right here. If we click on parallel, it's not going to give me anything right there. Parameters, all right, so if you want to read all of the parameters that it has set in here, you're going to go down here to the bottom and hit read, and then it's going to populate basically everything in here. Now, I will tell you that I have changed a couple of settings in here, not through this computer app right here, because I can't figure out how to actually change anything in here. It won't actually let me change it. All right, so anyway, in here, it's basically going to give you, everything that you need to know about all the parameter settings. Next one down is config. In here, we have to hit the read button again for it to populate everything. All right, and then you can see again the protocols that are set right up here. I don't know if I can change those over here or not. No, I can't. Okay, so that's just going to stay the same. Showing the max charge voltage 58.4 and the minimum is 44.8. Max charge and discharge are 100 amps. Okay, so one of the other things I did change, again, not in here, was the balance open starting voltage. I set it to 3.45. It was set to 3.4. And then the last one that I did change was the balance open differential, which was set at 30 millivolts. I just set it to 10. And then you got some other information right over here. Again, I can't seem to change anything through here, so that's what we got. Click on module. There's going to be some more information for your Wi-Fi, etc. I'm not going to hit the read button on that one. You can do history in here. You can read that, of course. You have debug and calibration. All right, there is a couple things up here on the top. You could do firmware upgrades if those were available. At this time, I don't know if they're available. Renewal, I'm not sure what that is. All right, and then one of the other helpful things that could be very useful is you can do graphs in here. All right, so if you're doing like a capacity test or something like that, you can set a graph for that. Now I did try to do this with my discharge test, but the app actually stopped working, and I think that's just this laptop. I think this laptop has some issues, but anyway, it didn't save. But you can do this inside of here, which is really, really cool. Okay, that's pretty much all we have for the computer app right here. All right, the next we're going to do is also in the little app guide right here. Basically, we're going to scan that QR code right there, which of course I have already done, and I'll just put that right up on the screen and we will check that out. All right, so this is the app right here. I have no idea what it says, but in here, basically what you're going to do is scan the area for any Bluetooth applications. You're actually going to get the little tiny MAC address that's on your computer. That's how you're going to be able to find it. So the last one on this is 44, and the other one that we're actually recharging right now is 3D. Okay, so we're going to connect to that one right there. First time you're going to connect is Bluetooth, but you can also add in your Wi-Fi, so it'll be a little bit easier for you to connect throughout your house again, which I have already done. All right, so the first screen that shows up right here is basically kind of like a quick snapshot, okay? Just an overall snapshot, okay? So it's going to give you your battery percent state of charge, your pack voltage, your current, basically whatever is happening, okay? Any sort of protections, high and low cell voltages, temperatures, and then finally at the bottom your inverter protocols that you are using. But you can also go to the pack and data down here on the lower left, and here it'll give you real-time data on what's actually happening with the batteries. Okay, so in here it looks very, very similar to the other screen, however it is green. Okay, so we actually just reached 100% state of charge, so our pack voltage is 53.6 volts, which I think is the highest that charger can go. So I might actually top it off with this charger right back here in a couple of minutes. But anyway, it's going to give you your pack voltage, your current, and then the status, which right at the current moment we're sitting at idle. Right below that is the basic information, how many amp hours are in the battery, your remaining capacity, and then how many cycles. For some reason that only shows 0, but it's actually 1 from the capacity test that we did last night. Right below that is the system info, so that's going to be your charge and discharge MOSFETs. That's basically your battery turning on and off whenever it's full charge, so it'll turn off charging so you don't overcharge it. Same thing for the low side, so you don't go too low. All right, right below that is your min and max battery cells right there. So our max is cell 13 at 3.355 and the lowest is 7 at 3.346. It doesn't show the delta right there, but it should here in another screen. And then right below that is your temperatures. All right, so if we go back up towards the top, the charger must have just kicked back on. So we're actually charging at 10 amps and we're at 99% state of charge right there. Very, very top, you can see we're on basic info. We're gonna go to the next tab over, which is volt and temp. And this will give you a little more detail on what the cells inside look like. Okay, so obviously it's a 16 cell battery pack. We're sitting at 54.53 volts. And then right below that is going to show you the voltage in every single cell that's inside. Okay, all right, and then of course at the very, very top you can click on system info right here. It'll give you your state of balance and all that kind of fun stuff, which none of the cells are balancing right now because we're within that 10 millivolts that I had set previously. All right, anyway, at the very, very bottom you can see summary, which is that first screen that shows up. We're actually going to click on the next one, which is parameters. And in here, this is how you're going to set your inverter protocol if you're not using the computer program like I showed just a minute ago. In here, this is actually how I did it whenever I first got the batteries so I could start charging them right away. And again, you can click on CAN or the RS232 right over here, and it's going to list out all the protocols that this battery works with. Okay, there's actually quite a few. I'm just going to leave mine on the Lux Power because that's most likely what we're going to connect up to over here. But once you have chosen your correct inverter, you're going to hit the confirm button and it's going to automatically save in here. Again, you can do that for the RS232 protocol, which I just put both of them to the Lux Power protocol. All right, and then finally you can hit on pack parameters, and that's going to give you your BMS code and your pack code. So this is a JBD 48 volt 100 amp hour BMS inside. I think that's pretty much all we can click on in here. If we click on device info down here at the bottom, There you go. It's going to give you your software version, project model, hardware model, and firmware version. And then this is where you can connect to your Wi-Fi network. And then finally, the last thing you could do, if these two batteries were linked together, you could actually go up to the very, very top right corner where it says Pack 1, and you can click on that. If you have more batteries connected up, through the communications, it'll actually show up right here for Pack 1 and Pack 2, and you can click through whichever one you like. Since I don't have these connected up, it's not going to show up. All right, but anyway, all right, well, there you go. That is going to be the EcoWorthy app. I will also let you know that you can connect to these with the, with the JBD app or the Overkill Solar app, which is typically how I like to connect to these. All right, so this is the Overkill Solar app. This is actually how I was able to change some of the settings whenever I first got the batteries and started charging them, and wanted to balance them out as quickly as I possibly could. It's going to give you all the same information, but it is kind of nice because everything is basically on this one screen, right here, okay? But down here at the bottom, you can hit the settings button. It's going to go ahead and pull all that data and give you all the parameters that are set inside the BMS. Again, this is how I change some of the settings, but I will say for some reason you can't change all the settings. Most of the ones in here you can change. Again, this is what I changed. I changed right here the start voltage for the balancer configuration. That was set to 3.4. I changed it to 3.45. Right below that, delta to balance, that was set to 30. I changed that to 10. And then if we scroll down just a little bit for the cell over voltage, 3.65 is correct. I didn't change that, but the release, that one I changed to 3.630. That is the release voltage for the cells, so I didn't have to wait very long for the cells to come down in order for the battery pack to start charging again. That's basically all I did. I will most likely change that back if I can remember what the actual thing was. Okay, so the other things that I for some reason it seems like you can enable or disable but doesn't actually do anything is where it says the balancer configuration. You have balancer enabled or balance only when charging. If I enable that right now, it's going to tell me to write that to the BMS, which supposedly, oh, actually now it's working. Now it's actually working, but previously it didn't seem to work. It's actually working on this app right here. It's showing me which cells are balancing. Whenever I did this previously, it just didn't do anything. So on here, it's not showing up as balancing, but over here, it is showing up. Interesting. Okay, well, I take that back. Supposedly it is balancing while it's idling. Oh, no, that one's this one over here. Go back to devices. Let me change batteries here. I mean, I'm pretty sure I enabled that with the other battery. Okay, nope. That one's just automatically balancing all by itself. But I will say, with the Overkill Solar app, it's only showing me the first 3 cells as balancing right over here. It doesn't show 14, 15, and 16. But that is nice that they are balancing. That was one of my concerns with using this app. None of the other cells would ever show up as balancing. All right, well, there you go. That's going to be all of the Bluetooth communications that I have been able to use and connect with these batteries so far. Again, there's probably many apps out there that you could use. These are just the only ones that I have tried. Alrighty, so for the capacity test, I basically just did that off camera because, well, it's boring. All I did for that is hooked up the batteries to an inverter, and then from the inverter, I went through a chargeverter, which basically is a battery charger, and then recharge my battery bank over there. Alrighty, so I walked away and then I came back and the laptop started doing updates all on its own. Hopefully that didn't screw up my capacity test results. So for the discharge test, I did a 0.2 C rate for the first battery. That is roughly 20 amps. And I got 5.3 kilowatt hour and 103 amp hours. All right, it shut off. So our results right now, at least for kilowatt hour, is 5.3. Once I put this back on a charger, I'm hoping that the state of charge number will be higher than 100 amp hours. And same for the Overkill Solar. Hopefully it'll reset and be a little bit higher. which, as you guessed it, is 3% over the advertised 100 amp hour that they claim. So that is good. And then right after that one was completed, I started the next capacity test on the next battery. I was gonna do a 0.2C, just as I did with the first one, but I didn't want to stay up until 1 o'clock a.m., so I just bumped it up to a 0.25C, so 25 amps, just so it'd end right about midnight. And I got the exact same results for that one, 5.3 kilowatt hour and 103 amp hours, again, which is 3% over the advertised 100 amps. So that is fan-freaking-tastic. Alrighty, for the next part of the video, we're going to kind of do a couple different tests here. Basically, we're going to simulate a power outage. All we're going to do for that is cut the main breaker to my house, hook up the batteries to an inverter, and then we're going to connect up to a generator inlet port, which I have installed over there by my main panel, and we're going to backfeed the main electrical panel, which in turn is going to power my house. This is basically the best way I know how to test the batteries in a real world situation. So this should accomplish a couple different things. Is one, can you use them in a, an off-grid house, cabin, you name it, whatever. And then of course, number two is a grid outage. A grid outage can be from a multitude of different things. Ice storm, a tornado, hurricane, volcano, you name it. All right, so here's gonna be our first test setup. I'll go ahead and explain everything and then we'll get started. Alrighty, so I have all the batteries hooked up and connected. Okay, so I have the two batteries in parallel with the cables that they provided. And I have my inverter connected right over here. Here's my positive, here is my negative. In the manual and in regular everyday off-grid life, how you hook up multiple batteries is you're always going to stagger your negative and positive across the whole bank of batteries, because if you hook up here and here, all the power is going to be basically drained from here and it's going to slowly drain from the other batteries that are connected in parallel. So if you connect one on each side, it's going to pull power from each battery equally. This is going to be battery 1 and this is going to be battery 2, so I do have the communications set up over here. We are in the out port right over here, and then we have the in port right over here. And then for our dip switches, again, I followed the manual for these. So battery 1, the first dip switch is going to be up, and then battery 2, the second dip switch is going to be up. And I also wanted to show that I do have the battery cables connected up correctly in accordance with their picture right here, so we don't replicate what has already been done.
Oh, Lord.
And the last thing, we do have communication to the inverter. We're going to be connecting up to a grow watt inverter for this first test. This is a 12,000 watt low frequency split phase 240 volt grow watt inverter, and I do have the communications. All right, so on this grow watt, I'm going to show you the protocol that I happen to get working. It is communicating correctly and not giving me any errors. So we're going to go to option 5. I changed that to lithium. In here it's going to say 51, and then the protocol I am using is L01. How I found that was page 19 of the manual. Basically I was going to try all of these until one worked. If one didn't work, then we weren't going to use any communications. And of course, since we're going to be walking around the house, I did hook up solar assist to this so we can view the percentages and how much amp draw we have while we're walking around. If we need to, we can also check out the laptop screen here as well. All right, so what we're going to be doing is going through the inverter AC output. I have connected up a DIY cord up to one of these, I forget what these are called, like an SS-50, and we're going to be going into the 50 amp generator port right here, which of course is going to backfeed my entire house through the generator input circuit breaker right here. So in order for us to do that, all we need to do is shut off the main breaker, lift up the generator lockout, and then turn on the circuit breaker. Step 1, plug into the generator input adapter, give it a little twist so she doesn't come out, turn on the inverter AC output. And one last thing before I flip us off grid is I did already disconnect my off-grid system. All right, here we go. So we're gonna lose all of our lights. I'm gonna flip up the generator and turn this on. Boom, there you go. Now my entire house is being powered by the two eco-worthy 100 amp hour server rack batteries. All right, so if we want to take a look at solar assist, because this is the easiest way to see what's going on. My house right now is drawing a total of 875 watts. Of course, right up here, you can see we don't have the grid because we're simulating a power outage. Battery voltage is 52.8 volts, and we're sitting at 98% state of charge. Typically what I do next is I just go around and show you everything that is being powered, and then we're gonna start powering various loads, which is gonna include the stove, air conditioning, dryer, you know, a saw, air compressor, you know, all of that kind of fun stuff. All right, let's get to it. So right back here, we have 3 LED lights, and then we got 2 sitting right over here. We have our hot water heat pump sitting right back there. The fan just kicked on, or the compressor just kicked on. So now we're actually drawing 1119 watts. Got one more LED light right there. And then we step out here, we got one light right there. And then back here where I do all my videos and all that kind of stuff, I have one LED light right up there. There's an LED light right over here. 6 LED lights up on the ceiling, and then these 2 LED lights right here. And then there is an LED light right over here. I also have my computer system on right here. The beer fridge right here. We actually have a mini fridge right over here that has the other beverages in it. If we make our way upstairs, I have one LED light right there. We have the ones on the stairs, so there's 3 light bulbs in that one right there. One LED light right there. In the kitchen right now, it's just the 2 pendant lights right here. In the dining room, there's a light right here. We have the little air filter thingy. One battery powered cat right here, another battery powered cat right here, LED light right here, and then right down here we have our wireless router, cable modem, stuff like that. We have the battery cat's drinking fountain. Of course, we have the refrigerator in the kitchen, and then I think back there in the bedrooms there's probably 1 LED light on, and then the 2 alarm clocks back there, and that's most likely it. All right, so at this current moment we are drawing 1232 watts. All right, so I think what we'll do next is we'll just start powering, you know, our regular everyday items, and then we'll work up to the bigger items. Number 1 is gonna be a simulated pot of coffee. I'm not making a fresh pot of coffee or anything like that. I typically only have like 1 or 2 cups in the morning, and that's pretty much it. Otherwise, I'll be kind of wired and I'll be weird. I'll be a weirdo. All right, we are at 12 cups. We'll go ahead and get this party started. Boom. There we go. We are at 2442 watts. That is only a quarter of what we can actually use. While the coffee pot is going, we're gonna step back in time and heat up this cup of water with my microwave. Maybe 2 minutes. All right, we're up to 3,588 watts. All right, we're gonna just go ahead and turn on some more lights in here. So that just added 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 more LEDs, which is nothing. There's another one that I always forget, which is the garage door opener, and basically anything else that is in the garage. It's not gonna be much right now. It shouldn't be really much of anything, maybe 20 watts. But I always forget about the garage. Okay, with those lights turned on, microwave and coffee pot, we are at 3,745 watts. I guess I'll go ahead and turn on the TV. Alrighty, TV is on. Didn't really add much. We're at 3,883 watts. Not very much. Here's another quick little test that we could do is, oh, microwave's done. It is steaming and nice and hot. All right, that was kind of steaming, but we're gonna put it in there for 1 more minute and make it steam even more. What I was going to plug in next was a vacuum cleaner just for the heck of it, because it has a nice surge to it with the microwave and the coffee pot. Watch out, girlfriend. I'm gonna turn this on, okay? Here we go. Watch out. Here goes. All right, here we go. 4,815. Now we're at a little less than that. That was nice and easy. Microwave's finished. I don't know if you can see any of that steam, but it is nice and hot. What are you talking about? Huh? Yeah, I feed you. You shouldn't have low batteries or anything. Plus, you just took a nap. You want some aloe? All right, coffee pot is done. We have dropped back down to 1350 watts. Yum. Watered down coffee. Alrighty, next test is going to be the 10-inch sliding compound miter saw and air compressor. Specs for the air compressor, this is 14 amps at 115 or 20 volts, 2 horsepower or 2.5 horsepower peak. The 10-inch sliding compound miter saw, again, 120 volts, 15 amps. Air compressor first. They both ran 2,500 watts. And then we'll plug in the saw. I'm not cutting any wood because we're down here in my basement. This is just basically for the surge. All right, so here we go with the 10-inch sliding compound miter saw. I mean, it did it no problem. I think it was a little slow to react on here to get the surge, but that's okay. It powers this absolutely no problem. All right, now I guess what we'll do is we'll just power both at the same time. So here's the air compressor. All right, I guess what I'll try next is I'll try to do both at the exact same time. See what that does. 1, 2, 3. Oh, we got up to like 6,500 or something like that. It happened so quick I didn't even get to see it. Alrighty, next thing we're gonna do is the dryer. I don't know if this has a sticker. Yes, it does. 120, 240, up to 24 amps. I have no idea. It should be around 5,000 to 6,000 watts. We'll make sure it's on the highest temp that I can go, which is on high. Here we go. 7,541 watts was the surge that it went up to. So it does that absolutely perfect. Ooh, I wonder if we can do the air conditioning right now too, which I'm going to attempt. So just to give you some information, I have a 4-ton air conditioning. I think the LRA, or locked rotor amps, might be around 120. However, I do have a soft start on it. So there you go, if that information is helpful. Okay, so let me switch over to my air conditioning, and then we're going to drop that down to 66. Come back over here. So we're at 68 right now. Oh, there it goes. I shut it all down. Okay, that was too much. Give me 1 second. I wonder if this shows a error on it. Oh, it might have already reset itself. So, okay, so we'll turn this back on. Okay, maybe I have to reset. All right, we'll go ahead and restart the batteries. I didn't see an actual error show up over here, but we definitely went over. Oh wait, did I trip this one? Oh, actually, you know what? The batteries would have done it. It was my circuit breaker right down here that I have in line. Wow, interesting. Okay. Okay, so that would have been my fault. It was actually this circuit breaker that I have in line. It is a 250 amp circuit breaker, so we surged well above that. All right, so that was actually not the battery's fault, that is my fault. I have a 250 amp circuit breaker in between the inverter and batteries, and that's actually what tripped. When I looked over here at the computer screen, there's no errors or anything like that, and I didn't have any errors flashing on the battery LEDs or anything like that, so that is really interesting. I'll have to get a new breaker, maybe? Well, this is basically for tests anyway. Might have to wait a minute since it all shut down. I guess we could go upstairs and maybe turn on the stove. All right, next we're gonna be powering the stove, and we're mainly using this to see how close we can get to the 10,000 watts, or 5,000 watts per battery. Okay, so we're gonna start with the big burner. We'll go ahead and put that on high. All right, that's basically half the battery right there. But again, we are powering the house. Okay, we'll go with this other bigger burner right over here. 75. Hopefully I don't trip that breaker again. Let's see what this one does. I might turn this one off. We're at 9,000 watts. Don't know if I can go any higher than that. Maybe I can turn on that one. Yeah, we might be playing that burners on and off game. All right, well, we did get real close to that 10,000 watt mark. 9,185 watts. Nice. All right, so we can power these plus the house, no problem. Basically 3 burners and this little warming zone right here. Next, what I'll do is I'll turn on the lower oven. I'll do the convection bake. Let's do 350. That's 4,000. We'll do the other. Looked like we only went up. There we go. All right, now we're at 6,524 watts. What if I turn you on real quick? 9490. Nice. So that's 2 of the lower ovens and this big one right here. Nice. Okay, and look at that. We're still at 81% state of charge. Nice. All right, stove, no problem. Next thing I want to do is try the air conditioning now that it's had a couple of minutes to kind of settle down. And we'll drop that down to 67. It's going to do it just fine. There we go. There was a little tiny flicker, but not much. 4,180 watts. Easy peasy. All right, so I don't know if you've noticed or not, but over here underneath the battery where it shows your voltage and your percentage, it also shows you at the current rate what your percent per hour would be at that load. So if we continue the 4,000 watt load, it's drawing 42% per hour. All right, and of course that is if you have everything set up in Solar Assist correctly, which I do. I have it set for 10 kilowatt hour, which is what we have right here. Okay, so it's based off of that. All right, well, I think everything is running fan-freaking-tastically. I don't really have anything else I could test other than keeping it hooked up and cycling it repeatedly, which I will do. Alrighty, fast forward a couple of days and everything is just fine. No problems with the batteries, no issues whatsoever. I know it's only been a couple of days, it's not long term, but that's the best that I have right now. All right, so after that day, I brought the 2 server rack batteries over here, hooked them up to the Lux Power inverter. The communications for that does work just fine, by the way. Anyway, hooked them up to my inverter over there and continued powering my house for the rest of the day, and then continued trying to power through the rest of the night. Now, I was going to continue, videoing and showing all that, but we actually use more than 10 kilowatt hour overnight. So the rest of that would have been boring because it wouldn't have really lasted. Now, if we didn't use like our stove or air conditioning or anything like that, none of the big appliances, and we kind of conserve, we could probably make it overnight. But in real life, if you're trying to take a like a 2,200 square foot home, which is what we have here, plus a basement and a wife, I would actually need a minimum of like another 20 kilowatt hours, so a total of 30 kilowatt hour to be in that safer 24-hour coverage. But that's really not using the air conditioning because right now it is May like 2nd or 3rd. We're not actually using the air conditioning very much. I'm thinking here in like a month or 2, we're actually gonna need a little bit more than that. Well, because the air conditioning just uses a ton of power. Minimum, at least at this time of the year, I would need at least 30 kilowatt hour. Again, for my entire house that's running basically all the big appliances, including the stove and the air conditioning occasionally, okay? Of course, we do have solar hooked up to recharge and continue the cycle, but you get what I'm saying. Your mileage, of course, may vary. On the flip side of that is if you're not trying to go off grid or anything like that and you have some power outages and stuff like that, you could 100% use these as an emergency battery backup, with a small inverter like the EG4 6000 XP or your favorite inverter. I can 100% recommend that, and I think it would do very, very well. All right, I'm gonna give you my real honest opinion about this battery, which I typically don't do for things that I review on this channel. Typically, I will leave it up to you, but I think this battery is fan-freaking-tastic, and I 100% believe, at least at this time, this could be, your main battery bank. Of course, if you had more than 10 kilowatt hour, plus use it as, an emergency battery backup. I don't think you're gonna have any problems whatsoever. All right, having said all that and not sharing the pros and cons, we will do that right now. So I made a little list of pros and cons. I'm sure I'm gonna, miss some. So if you have some, make sure you put those down in the comment section below. The first one is gonna be the price. on their website right here. I'm looking at it right now, and the current price at the time of this video is $850, and that is free shipping, at least here in the United States. However, if you do scroll down just a little bit, if you buy 4 packs or 4 batteries, the price goes down to $840 each, but you get a 4-tier rack. And of course, right below that, if you get 6 batteries, it is $820 a piece, and then you get a 6-tier rack. Again, free shipping. I don't think you can beat that anywhere. The next one would be the Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and Inverter Comms app and all that kind of stuff. It does have Bluetooth, it does have Wi-Fi, and you can get some pretty decent apps with it. The EcoWorthy app that you can download for this specific battery, honestly, it's pretty good. It has a lot of good features. It basically tells you everything you need to know. You can change your inverter protocols in there, etc. Pretty good compared to, well, many of them out there, because a lot of them don't have Bluetooth or Wi-Fi capabilities. The third one is they are small and compact, and what I mean by that is I have a couple other server rack batteries over there. They're just smaller than those, which are the Orient Power ones. Now the 100 amp hours of those over there are shorter, but they're thicker. The EcoWorthy ones are thinner, but a little bit longer, but they are, I don't know, they just seem a lot smaller or compact, and I like that. Number 4, it does basically everything it states it's supposed to do, like all of the settings, temperature, overcurrent. Actually, I didn't test overcurrent, but I tested that 250 amp circuit breaker. That works. Basically, it does everything that it states it will do. The inside looks good overall. It comes with a 10-year warranty. Now, of course, I don't have really any information on the 10-year warranty, but it does come with a 10-year warranty. It comes with everything you need, like all the battery cables and wires and, the side handles and all that kind of stuff. It comes with everything you need, minus wires going from battery to inverter. I want to say those typically will come with your inverter, so you don't have to worry about that normally. And the final pro is it seems like they do revisions or updates to the batteries from the past, and I'm only saying that from other videos that I've seen. One of them is, of course, the side handles. Those ones over there came removed, and I did have to put those on. The other one I think Will Prouse mentioned in his video is if you install your wires backwards, the inner part right here could touch one of the screws on the terminal that holds the terminal to the case. The previous model, I think, had more of a button head screw. These ones over here are flatter, so you do get a little bit more room in there. It just seems like they are, listening or seeing what's happening out there in the real world and making the appropriate changes. And I'm sure there's probably more, but I can't think of any right now, so we'll move on to the cons. Con number 1, this is in my opinion, and it's not according to the interwebs out there, is the battery cables inside. I personally think they should be bigger, especially if the batteries can be ran at 100 amps. I mean, that's a lot of power. I would think those little tiny cables inside would get kind of warm. Number 2 for the con is the BMS apps. Now I know that was also in the pro list, but it's also in the con list, and for that it is I can't change all the settings that I want to change. I also understand that they probably lock you out because you don't want just a rando changing things in there that you're not supposed to change. So I understand. I just wish I could personally change more of those settings. Number 3 is also the BMS. It does not reflect the actual discharge capacity, as it does not recalculate after a full cycle. So what that means is whenever the first battery inside the battery pack reaches the low cutoff voltage of 2.5 volts, that's obviously when the whole battery shuts off, so you don't drain it any further. But at that moment is your 100 amp hour, and that is regardless if you have actually consumed 100 amp hours or not. And I know that because whenever I was doing the first capacity test on battery 1, I was sitting there waiting for it for the last 5 or 10 minutes, and the battery capacity got down to like 1.2, and it hung there, and then it went down to 0 as soon as the first cell went to 2.5 and shut it off. And then whenever I looked at the boom shunt or the Victron Smart Shunt, we actually consumed 5.3 kilowatt hour, which is, 103 amp hours. So it doesn't actually, reflect or recalculate, whenever you recharge it. I know on other JBD BMSs or other BMSs, once you do a full cycle, your amp hours will recalculate, for your latest discharge or discharge test. So there you go. Number 4 in the cons list is going to be the Bluetooth range. Yes, it does have Bluetooth, but the range sucks, and that's basically because all of the antennae are inside of a metal case. Is that a huge problem? Not really, because if you do have, battery communications to your inverter, you can get at least your percent state of charge directly from that app, but the range isn't there. Number 5 in the cons list is, I don't know. Earlier, whenever I had the top off and I was explaining that the batteries are typically in the center of the box, your BMS is up front, and then the metal comes up around the sides of the battery to hug it on all sides. This one doesn't have that. I don't think that's technically really important, but I don't know. It didn't have it. I guess you're using less metal, which could potentially, bring the cost down, which is actually a pro. Number 6 is there is no like QC or quality control list. Some batteries that I do get, there's typically like a checklist that they go through just to verify everything is working correctly. I didn't get a sheet or anything like that. And also, whenever we were looking at the inside, I typically look for like a marker or a glob of glue, on basically every piece of hardware, which kind of signifies that it has been, done properly and or checked. Not saying that they don't do any sort of quality control or anything like that. It's just nice whenever they do send you a list. Number 7 in the cons list is whenever we were scanning the QR code, it didn't give me any information about the batteries. Again, it's not really a problem. A lot of other batteries that I've taken apart to scan those cells, those ones didn't show me information either, other than, which brand it was. It would be nice to see more information if you're like a geek like me. Now, number 8 is not really a con for me, but it could be for others. Obviously, there's no screen on the front of the battery. I don't know. Do you need a screen? Not really, because it has Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and all that kind of stuff, but maybe you want a screen, maybe you don't. And then finally, the very, very last one would be, obviously, it's not UL listed or anything like that. So technically, I believe that this can only be rated for an off-grid, installation, but to me, that doesn't really matter. I'm gonna use it regardless. Alrighty, well, that's pretty much all I got. I would love to test out, another 20 kilowatt hour for, 30 kilowatt hour total to do, like a test to see how long I could actually run off grid. So if you guys also want to see that, make sure you put that down in the comment section. Maybe we can get EcoWorthy to send out 20 more kilowatt hour and possibly a rack. That would be nice. And then we could see how long someone could run off grid, in a similar house, and appliances, etc. that I have. That would be a really cool test. All right, well, that's pretty much all I got. This video's gone on long enough. So of course, if anybody has any questions, comments, or concerns, make sure you put those down in the comments section. I do still read every single comment, and I also try to respond to every single comment. I also learn from many comments, so keep putting those down there. If anybody's interested in picking up some of these EcoWorthy lithium iron phosphate server rack batteries, I'm gonna have links and a discount code down below. And then finally, of course, the last thing is, if this video was helpful to you and had good information and you wanna help me out, the best thing you could do would be to smash the like button on your way out. Alrighty, well, that's pretty much all we got, and I will see you on the next one. Right, buddy? That's right. Yeah. Alrighty, and then, damn it, I hit the wrong button again. But it is communicating up to one of these. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. I missed the button. All right, and I'll go ahead and throw up.